What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Everflow podcast. I'm Antonio.
And my name is David Poso, and we are Everflow Sound. We're best friends who co-produce music together as Everflow Sound, and we moved from Orlando, Florida to Los Angeles, California, which is where we're based right now.
About a year ago.
About almost a year ago. We're coming up on our anniversary episode. We're coming up on an anniversary celebration, and it's been an amazing ride. And the whole point of us doing this podcast is to share some of the lessons that we've learned over the years in our life, in our profession, in our day-to-day intention of like living good lives and being good people, but also honoring ourselves and being honest. So we're bringing to light some of the topics that Tones and I talk about oftentimes throughout our days together as great friends, roommates, and co-production partners. But before we get into the themes for today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to these last few weeks, because it's been go for both you and I.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did that was really cool was we finalized the track Exercising Restraint with Harley, James Dixon. And it's officially mastered and ready to go. And Harley's got it. He's going to be deploying it, releasing it soon. And that was big, man. It was a big process. I think, what is that, our third song that we've done with Harley officially?
Third/fourth, right?
SMR.
Right.
We did Slow Mo Rewind. We did the Christmas singles and then the cover, right? So the Christmas single and cover, and then Exercising Restraint. So 4 songs. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Pretty big. And I think the coolest thing about this song, Exercising Restraint, was that Harley recently moved to Los Angeles, so we got to work with him in person.
Yeah.
And we have a podcast of his, which we'll link in the description below, so you guys could check it out, because we talk about a little bit of the creative process behind the first few songs that we released together. We haven't done one for Exercising Restraint yet, but that will be coming.
Right.
We'll do one when the time comes for Exercising Restraint.
Yeah.
That's Everflow. What have you been up to in Alaska, man?
Oh boy. I was just there. I was just in Alaska, in Juneau, Alaska, and had a great time. I was on a cruise ship, and grateful for any time to be able to perform, to beatbox, to have just the opportunity to be able to connect with people through music, with travel being involved. So had the time, had an extra day pretty much in Juneau, went on an awesome hike. Thankfully did not meet any bear along the hike.
I was literally thinking that, things to be grateful for. Didn't encounter any bears on the hike.
Yeah. No high fives with any bears. I'm okay with that.
Fives.
I'm okay with that. So that was an incredible time. Let's see. Prior to that,
You went to Colorado.
Yeah. So there's a men's group that I'm a part of that I've known these guys for, about 3 years now. It was during COVID times that I heard about this group. It's through the Alliance, which is with Connor Beaton. And I've met with these guys pretty much once a week for 3 years. And some of these guys I've never met in person. So when we went to Denver, we selected a cabin, got a whole Airbnb situation for the weekend, and got to really connect in an awesome way. One of the guys is a chef, so we had some delicious food.
Amazing.
And went on some hikes, cold water plunge, deep conversation. I appreciate those guys because they're kind of like that selection of men, similar to your and my friendship, where it's like you can bring any and everything to, and you will not be judged by these men, but they are there as a strong source of accountability to keep you in integrity, to keep you on the path. So it's not the no judgment, oh, you're good, man, if it really wasn't if it was an out of integrity decision, but it's, oh, interesting. Well, I know that you've explained that this is something that you value, so how do you feel about that with making that decision? And I'm like, oh. So it's good. It's great. It's the type of man I want in my life, and that I value that type of connection. So that was a great weekend with those guys.
Amazing. Dude, you're crossing the time zones.
Yeah.
I just got back from Bolivia. I was with my mom, which was really cool because ever since I moved to LA, my mom and I love her deeply. And it's just been interesting seeing how our relationship has evolved and what distance does to our relationship, mother and son. But being in Bolivia with her was amazing. And we were with our family members from Colombia, and we were there for our cousin's quinceañera, and spoke Spanish the whole time, which was such a beautiful awesome treat. I just love being immersed in Spanish culture and Spanish food. And before that, I got to go to Boston. I was in Boston for some private events that I was performing, and got to go to Lexington and Concord, which is the site where the first shots of the Revolutionary War were fired. And that was an impactful trip because Boston is steeped in this rich revolutionary history, one of the first cities found in the United States. So I did a bunch of like history tours and walked around, and it was awesome. But it's been about a month of like pretty much go. I left on July 15th and came back around August 15th. So we're going to be talking about some of the things that we learned during these travels, which include, what are some of those points that you have there?
Yeah,
Antonio?
so there's kind of 3 topic points that I wanted us to just dig into. They are, number 1, how to move through moments of transition. Number 2, the power of leading with gratitude, test versus opportunity, which we'll get into. And then the third one, solitude versus isolation versus seeking wise counsel. And what we've learned in some aspect of all those things in recent times. Because I know you and I've had a little bit of an opportunity to talk, but this is also our chance to be able to catch up.
This is our chance to catch up.
Like, why don't we just do it on a podcast?
Yeah, I know that when you and I were checking in with each other a few times, we were like, man, we got to talk about this on the podcast, because it was just lots of life going on in the last few weeks. And we got to see each other in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that little detail, right? I think
And
that was
Orlando.
and Orlando.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. And the flyaway bus. But let's talk about transition, man. Let's talk about, how you've been experiencing it and how I've been experiencing it in our own kind of individual lives, and what we've learned.
Totally. Well, I know for me, I've been learning kind of day to day how to transition from task to task with more awareness, more intentionality. Not that I have to be perfectly intentional every single time. I mean, I'd love to be, but it's like, let's say, wrapping up a production session. My brain's pretty fried. What I might do on default is go straight to Instagram. It's like, is that actually going to serve me right now? No, it won't. What do I actually need though? But beneath that need to go to Instagram is like, I need a break, maybe some entertainment, maybe a breath of fresh air, literally, maybe how about let's actually go outside for a walk. Instead, in that moment of transition from hard creative output, and then being able to have some type of replenishment, rejuvenation. I'm learning right now that I'm relearning that there are cycles to life. So we have that, the prior to, a more specific thing in this whole time was like out in Orlando, had that corporate event, and I had to create 20 minutes of nonstop content of me on stage, incorporating, producing / DJing / teaching people how to beatbox in like a Reggie Watts type of vibe. And it took a lot of creative output to create a 20-minute segment. Biggest thing I've ever done is like maybe a 5-minute solo when I was with D Capella. And that's like, for me, easy to do. 'Cause I beatbox a little bit. I teach them a couple sounds. We have fun. Boom, done, 5 minutes. But now we have 15 more minutes to go.
Yeah.
So the big thing I learned in this time in Orlando was, number 1, high creative output, appreciating this whole process. So high creative, innovative output, high level appreciation from the client. That was really highly appreciative, thankfully, of the work that me and the keynote speaker put in. And then third, a great level of pay. And so for me, it's now finding how I can incorporate more opportunities like that. However, at the end of all of this, I get back here to LA and I'm like ready to hit the ground running and go. And I'm fighting against what I'm now realizing, if I look back on it, I needed to rest. I had just crafted, I know it's maybe only 20 minutes, but it took a lot of effort to create something out of nothing with that. And the event itself was go. And the other things I did in between the event was pretty, took a lot of energy. So I'm learning about fruitful rest versus unfruitful rest, and just what that means to honor, I'm in a low point. That doesn't mean low, negative, dark, poor habits. it just means, oh, I'm not in a heightened creative flow. I need to rest. I need to reconnect with other aspects of life at a more slower pace. I need to take time to make some healthy food at home. Maybe I have a couple phone calls with friends. Maybe I don't schedule 7 sessions in a row when I get back into Orlando, to honor this moment that I need in order to have the next swell. I may run into that swell because I'm trying to swell before that next heightened moment of creative output comes, just with how life unfolds. But rest, I feel like in that moment of transition, is something that I'm still learning about.
The kind of rest that is regenerative and rejuvenating versus like not really engaging rest. Like, for example, I say engaging because like when I go on social media and I'm kind of numbing out, it's not engaging me, versus like the kind of rest where you're like, you put the phone to the side and then you're just feeling the things that you need to feel, the things that are in the silence. That kind of rest is very important, especially in those moments of transition. It's very interesting. I always feel like we're always changing in life. We're always growing. We're always in transition. But to me, I almost feel like there's a distinction between certain seasons of transition. Like some feel more transitory. Some feel more like I'm going through changes right now. As opposed to like moments where you're in a flow and a rhythm, like you were saying, kind of like the cycles, the rhythms of life. Like, and that's been one of the interesting things for me about transition is like, I feel like I'm in a very transitional phase in my life where I'm doing my best to let go of things that I've held on to for a long time and replacing them with beautiful, good habits, good rest, clarity, self-care. And the art of maintaining and taking care of yourself during those moments of transition is so important.
Oh my God.
It's so important because like even you've taught me and shown me through your example of like you have to replace these things that you're letting go of with healthy habits, with healthy options. Because if there's a void, you know, if you replace one bad habit, or not even replace, but you just remove a bad habit, but then don't replace it with a good habit, the void will be filled in with the next
You'll
automatic, juicy sedative that you have available to you. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like even some of the things that you were sharing with me about the moments that you've been experiencing in your life as of late, and the way that like you're focusing on like the good rest and the good recovering as you go through these transitions. And every now and then you'll fall and like have a moment where you're like, oh, I didn't rest the way I wanted to. I kind of numbed out in a way that wasn't really constructive. But yeah, I know that you've been sharing with me some of that about how certain life circumstances and challenges can prompt you to want to numb out in certain types of way. Mm-hmm. And it's a blessing to be able to not numb out in that bad habit type of way, because I feel it allows you to grow forward. It allows you to move through the transition as opposed to kind of get stuck in the transition and like just always be in transition. And these last few years have been crazy and like,
right.
You know, so yeah, just thinking out loud.
Yeah. It's almost like learning how to honor the moment. I need to rest. If I don't honor it and I think I need to keep on kicking butt because as a man, I need to lead. As the person that I am, I need to make sure that I honor some step forward. And that can turn into an unhealthy element of drive to try to aim for something when the drive for my dreams can actually become a distraction in moments where I need to rest and rejuvenate. And I feel like there's a lot of beautiful insight you can reflect on as well on, let's say, that whole time out in Orlando. If I take enough time, which I took some time, but if I take even more time to like reflect, how did everything go? What can I learn from this experience? And be able to honor kind of this kind of like relaxing into just like a state of maybe lower vibrational things that I do. Again, laundry, cooking food, things that might be on a little bit more of a simple element of thing that don't require such high level innovative, creative output, can help honor the rest that I need in this moment to then transition. So it's like in transition, whatever it is, being able to move, and as you said, like we're all moment to moment, transitioning moment to moment. But how to do it with integrity.
And with a bit of awareness.
Yes.
And by staying awake through the transition.
Talk about nuance.
Let's talk about...
Absolutely.
I feel like it's important to talk about why transitions are challenging. And for the reason that we should talk about it is like kind of to let people, like to understand and kind of even for ourselves, vocalize why they are challenging. Why are transitions challenging? So that we can understand that it's okay for them to be challenging, and to also understand that there's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of situation. You know, because when you're in the thick of the transition or of the most challenging moment of this transition, maybe it's a breakup and you guys are like right about to break up, you know, or even leading up to it. Like, that's really tough. Maybe it's a tough conversation you have to have with a coworker, with a family member. Like, and you know, I want to kind of dissect a little bit of why it's challenging to go through these transitions so that we can kind of also start to look to the other side of it. So how to get through the transition and what to do on the other side of it.
And I feel like this is per situation, per person, because different people move differently. I know from myself, let's say, recently went through a breakup, and I know I can have a tendency to fall into committee approach when I might not be as confident of what decision is the best one for me to make. I'll go into, hey, bro, what would you do? Hey, Angelo, what would you do? I would ask other people, and young Antonio would ask other people and just do what they told me because they probably know better than I would, and then I'll just follow that. That does not serve me at all for decisions that are deeply meaningful for me to make sure I'm making a decision that feels right for me, which actually goes into solitude versus isolation versus seeking wise counsel. Knowing I have a tendency to get into committee approach, a way for me to make sure that I go to specific people, it's wise to tap into your support systems, people that genuinely care for your well-being. Being able to tap in, hey, this is something that I'm going through right now. I would appreciate some of your reflection, some of your insight. Just what do you think, knowing me, of what you're noticing? Not necessarily what do you want me to do, but especially I've noticed, especially like man to man, being in the arena with your brothers is saying, what I'm going to do is show up a mirror to you of what you're telling me or what you're saying or who you say that you are, who I know that you can be. And I'll put up a mirror. I'm not going to tell you what to do in the arena. I'm not going to tell you this is the best sword you can use. Use that to pierce the lion.
Right.
Like, that's not for me to do. Because you may not yet have the tactics like jujitsu on like what move. You could tell me how to do a particular move, but if I don't actually know how to do it in my core, it's not going to serve the moment. So specifically in a moment of transition about, let's say, a breakup, taking enough time to seek out that wise counsel can be valuable. And then going into solitude, my own solo one-on-one time to realize, okay, amongst the information that I've received, what do I feel like is the best decision for me to make? This could be a split second, this is the right choice for me to make. Or this could be a multi-day experience of all the ups and downs and what ifs and my mind trying to take over. And especially for a heart-centered matter like relationships, I feel like it's extremely important to get into our heart. Especially as a man, I know that it's easy to try to think logically on what might be the best way to move through this moment.
How to move the chess pieces to reach the desired outcome.
Right, exactly. How to cause the least amount of pain, least amount of hurt. And realizing that particularly when you're involved with someone else in a transitional moment, honesty is a gateway to liberation. No matter how much pain that can happen in a transitional moment, let's say like a breakup, being open and honest is kindness, is the pathway to say, hey, I'm not going to drag this on because I'm unsure about how I feel. I'm going to be completely open and honest, even if there's ambiguity and I don't yet have a solid answer. But especially in a relationship, maybe we can find an answer together, depending on the situation. In this scenario, I feel like I needed the balance of that wise counsel and then time and solitude. But the thing you have to be careful of is when that solitude goes into isolation. And for me, I know myself, and in isolation, I can start to get into my head and start having my fears overtake me. And so learning how to notice with awareness and presence, oh, I'm starting to get into isolation. I'm starting to want to numb out. I'm starting to want to hide from life. I'm wanting to maybe delay telling the truth to someone because I'm not yet ready, or whatever it is. And being able to really allow God to shine light on the situation, people who care about you to shine light on the situation, because things can become 100 times worse in our mind when fears are leading us in a particular direction. And that's where I feel like sometimes for all of us, transitional moments of a bigger weight can feel more challenging to move through because maybe all you see is the fear. All you see is the wall of trees without realizing, oh, there's actually a pathway through this forest that might feel dark to eventually get to a lighter area where, I don't know, there's peace to be found. Yeah. So I know it's a per situation basis, but I know for me, tapping into my support systems as my wise counsel, as the men in my life that are going to shine and put up a mirror to me saying, this is the man that you say you are, or these are the things you're telling me. What do you think about what it is that you told me? And then doing my own personal work in solitude to make sure I'm remaining in my heart and not my mind, making sure I'm tending to essentials. I feel like, especially when life can get crazy due to more traumatic events or just challenging moments, super crucial to tend to the essentials: food, water, sleep, to then get into our core. That way, when we're in solitude, we know what answer feels authentically correct for us to make. Knowing we're human, we might make a mistake. We are going to make mistakes at certain points, and that's okay. And pain is a part of love. But if you move with love, you move with courage, you move with bravery, you move with honesty, and you do the best that you can, that's all you can do, is the best that you can. But the brave thing to do is to show up, is to move through that transition, not to hide, to cower away, to numb. Because in a way, I feel like when you move through that door, that's the only way you're able to get to the next corridor where the next door can open. But you'll never get there if you just stay hiding in the corner.
And it makes sense why we hide, because it's hard to go through change. It's hard to get to a point where you're about to take a step and the next step leads you into the unknown, right? And I find that is why most people do not transition. Most people stay where they're at in any arena of life, whether it's work or a relationship, anything, is that it's scary to get to this place where you're like, I feel like I need something else, or I want something else, or I desire this kind of experience in my life, but like I've never been there before. And getting to that point requires me to do something I've never done before, which means it's unknown, which means it's scary. Yeah. Which means like us human beings, for the most part, we're very much wired to do the same thing, because if we are still alive, that means the same thing has been working to keep us alive. It doesn't bring us happiness, but it does bring us life. It keeps us alive, right? But now that we have this opportunity to make different choices with our lives and decisions with our lives, like we have to kind of overcome the limbic part of our brains that keeps us in the safety of our habits and patterns in order to have the bravery to walk through these transitions. And sometimes transitions are challenging too, because you're the only person who's transitioning in your environment. Maybe you're the only example that you've ever had in your life that is like ending a toxic relationship. Everybody else that you know is in one, you know? Or you're the only person who's asked for a raise, or like any other stage, you know, like maybe your parents or your friends look at you like you're crazy, bro. Why are you ending that relationship if it's good and it's comfy and he's wealthy? Or if she's sweet and cool and it looks like she'll be a great mother, you know, like, But ultimately,
We all seem so happy together.
we all seem so happy together. But like you are the one that's ultimately responsible because you know the truth. And that's where I feel like it's so important to be honest with yourself about what the truth is. And that's where I feel like what you were saying about isolation versus solitude, taking the time to sit with yourself and get into your heart, mix a little bit of heart and logic together, but like really get down to the core of what is it I want? What is it I need? And where is it that I should go? And what is it I should do? You know? And I love talking about this concept that my sister taught me about, like when in life transitions, pray and ask God for help. Ask God to give you peace. That if it's meant to be this thing, this transition that you're going through, that he may show you the way and give you this peace that makes you feel complete and like you don't have to doubt what you're doing, you know? And I've done that before in certain moments of my life, and it's been a blessing because, you know, if you get to the edge and you're like, oh my God, this next step is totally unknown, but I'm gonna take this leap. God, if this is the right move, let me leap and let me feel the peace. And you leap and then you feel the peace. It's unreal. One of my favorite things about you and I's friendship and relationship is that we encourage each other to take these leaps in our life into the unknown, to go through the transition with integrity, with awareness, and to keep moving through, because we know that I know that I'm the only one who knows what I want in my own life and what will make me the happiest. So it's my job to kind of walk this path, even if it's a little uncomfortable and uncertain. And what a blessing to have people that you can call and talk to and share these things with, you know, that they can help you move through these transitions. But it's important, alluding to what you said about listening to your own voice and honoring your own voice, because everyone will have an opinion.
Oh yeah.
And certain people will give you opinions in a very unique way, in a way that it's like basically you need to take their word, you know? And other people have a little bit more like they'll let you know like, hey, this is what I feel, but ultimately like you know what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like having the difference between like this is what you should do versus hey, this is what I've thought, and since you're asking me, and this is what I feel is a good idea, and then you got to make your decision. And don't worry, like
Right.
Like one of the things that we talk about a lot that I like to say is like either way, there's no wrong choice. You're going to be okay. At the end of the day, like if you make the wrong choice, you can always make a different choice in the future, right? If you decide to stay in the relationship, you can break up in the future. If you decide to break up in the future, or now, you can always get together again in the future if you feel like you made the wrong choice. You can always go back. But to not make a choice and to feel like you're out of alignment with your own happiness and your own internal compass is big tough stuff, because it kind of helps you, it makes you fall asleep. It makes you kind of lose touch with all of the other things in your life. And it's really originating from this one or several instances of like when I denied myself the thing that I wanted the most, when I didn't honor the truth that I felt.
Oh, yeah. I feel like another thing as well is having the awareness and the bravery to follow the peace. Because I feel like in particular moments, again, asking for a raise, breakup, I mean, anything. I feel like there is an element of your own internal compass. You know what's best for yourself in the way of the direction of your choices and the path that you're following, or the type of work environment that you're looking for or that you need. That maybe the majority of the other people you work with are totally set with the way things are working. They're fine. But maybe they're not the right set of circumstances that you need. And you know that if you stay where you're at, you will feel it within your heart like, this doesn't feel right. I need to make a decision. I need to make a change. I need to seek out and express what it is that I need. And there's peace, even in the unknown, even in the like, this is the decision I need to make. It's going to change things. And I don't know what in the world how things are going to look after I make this decision. But I do know that I feel peace in my heart in the unknown. So it's almost like a confidence in yourself. And even for me, in this moment that I recently spoke about, like I was like, oh, what decision do I make? And maybe, yeah, that feels like the right decision. But what if blah, 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 and so many answered prayers and blah, 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 blah. All this stuff. Again, more mental and fear-based thoughts. But when I eventually found the peace in my heart, okay, I know my thoughts in the next 20 minutes are going to change, but what's undeniable is the peace in my heart that I feel right now amongst the unknowns. So I feel like moments of transitions also, they create change. And it requires that relationship with the unknown, and to have kind of an awe and a wonder, almost like a childlike type of awe and wonder about the unknown of like, and kind of an element of play of like, I have no idea how this is going to pan out, but it's worth taking the risk, following the peace that I'm feeling in my heart to honor that and just see how things unfold. And as you said, if I ever need to make a different decision in the future with our free will, we can. Mm-hmm. And if you move with integrity, let's say a relationship, there's a possibility to rekindle something down the line if that feels right for you. Or again, a job opportunity. If you handle the situation of asking for a raise with integrity, you're not burning a bridge of saying, this is what I need or I'm out. And then you leave the job and 2 months later, like, hey man, it'd actually be really nice to get back. And it's like, no way, you burned this bridge, buddy. So being able to move with integrity allows the bridge to stay connected. Mm-hmm. If you can serve them later on down the road, if they can serve you down the road, if you want to rekindle again a relationship down the road. And believe me, I've done it without integrity. Mm-hmm. I've done it where I've allowed my fears to overtake and made horrible decisions that absolutely burned bridges. Mm. And I still think about it. And I'm grateful to learn from past pains. But I feel like the best thing you can do to honor that life lesson is to evolve the way in which you show up in a similar situation in the future. If you stay the same, then you haven't learned anything. Mm-hmm. Or you've learned it, but again, you're finding it too challenging to be courageous and brave in this moment to actually make a different choice. Mm-hmm. So tapping into that courage, tapping into that bravery can turn into a fruitful path ahead amongst the unknowns, I feel like.
I love the unknown conversation because sometimes it feels like you're going to die. Mm-hmm. Like if you take that next step, like this person's going to hate me forever, or I might burn this bridge and it might not, I don't have a plan B. And like, it's so funny that this day and age, we're so afraid of like the worst thing that could happen is death. And sometimes these decisions feel like life and death. But the truth is that 90% of the decisions that most people make don't involve life and death when it comes to like first world country kind of situations. Like you're not going to die if you make that phone call or if you take that leap. Most of the times you won't, And I think it's important to say that because the thing that keeps us from leaping is our own imagination and thinking of what's going to happen to me after I jump off this cliff into the abyss of the unknown, into the abyss of transition. And most people don't jump because of that fear. You almost have to fool yourself into taking the leap.
I mean, sometimes, yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like, I think you and I may have spoken about it. So like when we talk about our inner child, our inner father, and being able to father ourselves, especially in moments like that of like, what would either your father say, or what would you want if you were to draw up a father figure to speak to you in this moment of what you feel like you need to hear in order to tap into, again, that courage, that strength, that move with kindness, the element of honesty, being able to lead the situation and maybe be more assertive and less passive in a particular situation, where that type of father figure can come into play. There's other moments where I feel like kind of our inner primal inner teenager can also come out to play in a way of like, you know what? I don't know what's about to happen, but I do know that this is the way I'm going to feel. So I'm just going to move with this and just see what happens.
Yes.
And there's less of a childlike, completely unexperienced, I don't know, trying in this direction. And I don't know, it's kind of dealer's choice, but I like when I tap into either my inner child or tap into my inner teenager or inner father, seeing kind of which version of myself is going to influence me the most to take a leap that feels like just the right path to make right now at this moment. But yeah, I feel like it's an interesting concept because when we think of our inner teenager, we're like, whoa, I wouldn't let them run the show.
Yeah, but sometimes they're useful.
Yeah.
I remember when you brought that up and we talked about it and how it's like, yeah, like, I remember, let's talk about remembrances. Johnny Swim, Abner from Johnny Swim, I remember he once upon a time reminded me that like the voice that you should listen to when you're on the path towards your dreams is the voice of the child within you that had that dream, that initial spark. Don't listen to the adult in you that's got to pay the bills. Don't listen to the doubter in you that doesn't know if you're going to write another amazing song after you wrote a couple great ones. Listen to the voice of that little dreamer inside of you, which is a little kid that did it because they loved it, did it because they thought it was the best thing in the world and they didn't need to be paid to do it and they just loved it. But it's the same concept of like, we are who we are right here and now. And sometimes we need a little bit of a different push from a different angle in order to take a leap, in order to sign on the dotted line, in order to make, to do the thing that like the other versions of you are like, F that, we ain't gonna do that. That's crazy. Like, when we moved to LA, right? Like whatever it was that you and I had when we decided to come out here was drawn from some parts of us that were enough to help us make the leap to overcome the fear of everything that we should have been afraid of, and ultimately, there is so much joy in seeing a transition through, walking through it with the best of you, and knowing that you can't control what happens on the other side. You can only control your own decisions, your choices, and you're going to be okay once that critical moment, that tipping point happens, the one that you're like, when you get to the other side of it, it'll be okay. And it'll be another day. And if God grants you another day on earth, you open up your eyes and you're awake and you're like, oh, wow, okay. I survived last night's breakup. I survived that crazy phone call with my boss. And what a beautiful thing to remember it. And it's just encouraging for anyone who needs to make a transition or is kind of putting off making this change in their life. Like, listen to your heart. Ask yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? What is it that's going to make me happy? And what is it that's going to fulfill me and help me help other people around the world? And then listen and then jump. Don't wait another 5 minutes. Don't call a friend for confirmation.
Right. And that's also the element of someone once told me, say what's so when it's so. And I feel like the element of saying what's so when it's so is speaking your truth as the truth has come into reality. And I feel like that serves so many things. If you were to delay your truth to a later point in time, it might become convoluted because like, I don't even remember like where that came from or like what I was even feeling in that moment. Maybe I just don't even need to bring it up. And then that can kind of stockpile in the back of the other things that you don't necessarily tend to, that then potentially build into a moment of, you always leave the microwave on high or whatever it is.
It could turn into some unseen baggage.
Yeah, and of course, when there's other dynamics at play within a relationship, or again, even at work, a boss that has a particular type of personality that's tough to work with, and if enough time goes by, you can kind of, again, lose sight of an opportunity that could have come to the forefront if you said what's so when it's so. Obviously, sometimes, especially if things get to a point where it, like, let's say, pisses you off, maybe some time to cool down is needed. But in order to still stay within your authentic truth of like, okay, but this still needs to be spoken about. So let's say even like a moment of transition. You and I were working months ago, and I noticed an element of say what's so when it's so. Both you and I were in a space that was like, woo, this is kind of a tough environment to create music in. And we were about to dig in to a part of the song that required a lot of creative output. We were gonna, like, I think, build the bridge for the first time ever on that day. And I was like, all right, before I press play, hey, bro, I'm feeling, I don't know what it is, but I feel like angry. Like I went to go play pickleball to go burn off some steam and feel better, and I felt great. But then when I got back inside, that like the anger seeped back in, like attached like a vest. And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know why. I don't know what the answer is, but I have to bring it to you right now.
Come on.
To let you know that it's here. So if you read energy off of me, that's what it is. And that turned into a conversation where you and I both brought to the surface what it is that we were experiencing.
Yeah.
Which then allowed us both to open up the door to converse what we needed to converse about, to move through whatever we needed to move through about. But if we didn't have that conversation and we tried to have that creative music production session and like type of mentality, I don't even want to know what that session would have turned into, you know?
Me either.
You know?
That's the fruit, man. That's the fruit of listening and hearing, and then trusting that what you're hearing and feeling is certain, and taking the leap and jumping.
Yeah.
I remember you and I both on that day. And the fruit of it, bro, is one of the most fruitful conversations you and I have ever had. It's one of the most, it was an evolution and a growth in our friendship and brotherhood.
Totally.
That came, and I thanked you for taking the leap, for bringing it up, because it's like, yeah, you felt it, I felt it. We were both like, and then you were like, I was like, me too, bro. Me too. I feel it. I don't know what it is. Let's talk about it. And we talked about it. And like, that was one of those things that we didn't know what was on the other side. And we also didn't know what was happening right there and then.
Right.
The unknown factors in transitions can be so real, because it's just like, we're human. We don't know what we don't know. But the fruit of going through the transition is that it informs us and it helps us learn. That's the fruit of getting older, is that you get to go through more transitions in your life. You get to experience change in your life, which help you to learn new lessons that you didn't know when you were younger. You know, the first time you ever broke up with someone looks different than the last time you ever broke up with somebody. Hopefully, as you get older.
Hopefully.
Sometimes it doesn't. And hey,
5 relationships deep, and this guy's still making the same decisions.
In the way that you talk to, the way that you do business.
Yeah.
You know, it looks different from the first day you signed a deal to the most recent thing you ever did.
Yeah.
Why? Because the process of transition, kind of like what we're talking about, the fruit of suffering is perseverance. The fruit of transition is that you learn and you have an opportunity to integrate those lessons into your next transition, into your next challenge, into your next hard thing that you're going to do, into your next pivotal moment of your life, you know? And that's why it's important to stay awake in those transitions and to kind of like rack up some momentum in that world, because like you said, there's also the other end of it where you reach this moment, this critical moment in your life, and then you don't jump. And here's something that I wanted to talk about, is that it is okay if you get to a moment of transition and decide not to jump. It is okay, because the next one will come.
True.
And if that next one comes and you decide not to jump, it is okay to not jump. It's okay to feel afraid and to let the logic kind of talk you out of making this decision for yourself. I say it's okay because it truly is okay. I've learned, it's been important for me to reconcile the moments in my life where I felt like I've had an opportunity to make a change and I didn't. But they do come at a cost. And it's something to be very aware of, because it's not kind of like get out of jail free. Like every time it's going to be okay. Whenever you turn away from these moments of transition, they impact your perspective of who you are, what you stand for, what you're capable of. You know what I mean? And I'm very familiar with this because in my own life, I've experienced this many times. So I say this point that it is okay to get to this moment of transition and decide not to do it because you're afraid. It's okay. It's okay if you didn't do it. But it's encouragement also to like F the fears and the doubt and like, yo, eventually, sometimes if you don't jump on enough transitions, you might get to that one transition where you look back and you're like, I didn't jump all these other times. I'm jumping on this next one. Mm-hmm. And that is amazing. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. It's a lesson in that there's nothing wasted in this life. And those moments weren't in vain. And those opportunities lost weren't in vain because they help you. It's the same thing. It's almost like both sides of the transition, you'll learn something. If you go through with it, you'll learn something. If you don't, you'll learn something.
Right.
And those things will help to inform you so that when those beautifully critical moments of our lives appear, we can make the decisions that are most aligned with who we are and what we want and what we need and what is best for us, which is best for everybody. And it's practice, I feel. Like, little moments of decision add up to big moments of decision. If you're strong in the small things, you'll be stronger for the big things, You and I both haven't had an experience yet where we've lost somebody, a loved one, like a
near
death of a near
close.
and dear, somebody in our immediate families or anything. Yeah. And that's something that will come someday. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's just like these little moments, all of it, help you to learn and grow and prepare you for those bigger things that come down the line, whether it's death or whether it's bigger or different,
Right.
So, yeah.
That, I feel like, I feel like there's a lot of nuances that are valuable to take note of. So as you're talking about, it's okay not to leap. Huh? It's okay not to leap. It's okay not to leap. You can stay there and not leap. You have free will. Mm-hmm. And there are consequences. So in a way, that life lesson, that test or opportunity will arise again. And how will you choose to show up? There are consequences, good and bad. There are certain type of fruit that we bear when we make a particular series of decisions. Each one of them have their consequence. Moving again with integrity, honesty, transparency also doesn't mean it's easy. It means you may go through a lot of pain. But through that pain and suffering and did I even make the right decision? Now I kind of changed my mind. And again, maybe tapping into your resources, your support system again, and just moving through that whole time has the opportunity to bear very sweet fruit by having faith in the process, in yourself, in God, by moving with integrity and intentionality and presence and awareness and purpose. In understanding, I don't have the answer yet, but I'm a believer that things happen for a reason. And in those moments, I was going to say, in those moments that you don't jump, do I jump? Do I don't jump? Having patience, forgiveness, and grace is so incredibly important. And that's what I appreciate you for, is because in my conversations with you, you helped to remind me of that, to apply grace to myself in the fact of, yeah, maybe I've gone through this type of moment before, but I haven't gone through this specific moment before. So give yourself grace. Like, again, you're not going to die from this situation, and we're all going to die. So no matter what decision you make, eventually, when you zoom out of this life circumstance, first off, everything's going to be okay. Secondly, the more kind to yourself that you are, the more grounded you can be in this moment of unknown. And in the moment, sometimes there's that experience where your heart feels like an open wound. and you're trying to protect it. You're trying to, maybe survival instinct, keep yourself as protected as possible. And you might feel like you have an open, raw, with salt on it wound that is just in pain. And I feel like having the grace to even just acknowledge that that is where you're genuinely at in that particular moment can provide you a sense of peace, can provide you a sense of freedom, can provide you the freedom to cry, the freedom to move, the freedom to just understand you don't quite yet have an answer, while having faith that you are going to have an answer eventually. And that this too shall pass. But that element of grace, I feel like, is what is so powerful, which gets also into the power of leading with gratitude. Test versus opportunity is what I have here. But I even know for myself, especially when I feel fear in a particular moment, and there's a decision that I can make, big or small, that can have an impact on how things are going to unfold moving forward. It's not about moving, I'm going to be fearless. There's no fear. I don't have any fear. I don't think it's about that at all. I think it's having the courage to move despite the fear that you feel. And having the grace that in this, you might stumble as you move forward. It's not like a smooth ice skating.
And it doesn't have to be either.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a picture-perfect journey.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about is also how the journey can look different for everyone. For any individual, like, like we've all had our own unique set of experiences that we've had in our lifetimes. Relationships with fathers that have been broken, relationships with fathers that were completely whole and they were part of your life, right? You were bullied. You were the bully. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these different lines through which we all traverse to get to where we are, which means that we respond differently to different situations, and we also treat ourselves differently in certain situations. Like, for example, at a spelling bee, one person spells the word wrong, and they're like, I'm an idiot. Another person spells the same word wrong, and they're like, I'll get it next time. You know? Like, same stimulus, same error, but like completely different reactions. And what happens when they spell the next word wrong? I'm a freaking idiot. I spelled that last time wrong. I spelled this one wrong. I'm an idiot. This person, you know, so it gets heavier. The other person, they're like, oh, they're kind of skirting along the top of things. It's not getting too muggy, not too buggy, you know? So for me, I've been the kind of person, not that I'm an idiot, but I have been the kind of person that's kind of been really intense with accountability and like, I messed this up or I missed this opportunity. There's other people in this world who aren't as intense and heavy with themselves, which is great, you know? So I bring that to the forefront so that we can just acknowledge that the journey looks different, the healing looks different, the challenges look different, the apprehension and anxiety that someone feels towards making the same decision as someone else can be very different, even though they're the same decision, even though their life circumstances could be very similar, right? And it's important to kind of just pay attention to that nuance, that your journey doesn't have to look like someone else. And you also have to understand that if it's easier for you to make a transition, it might not be for somebody else because they might have a completely different set of circumstances that they've had up until that point in their life, you know?
Or a perspective on the situation that you bring to the table is like, well, I don't think it's like that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. And like, you can be a little lighter with it. And that's what I'm working with for myself, right? Not being as intense with beating myself up.
Take it easy, okay?
Look, man, a little bit of grace for you.
Take it easy.
A little bit of grace for me. I love this conversation, man. I'm glad that we've had this conversation today about transition and about grace. I think let's talk about grace. Let's talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
This last bit.
Yeah, we have about 10 more minutes.
Perfect. Let's talk about, or whatever else you feel like you might want to talk about. But I know that grace has been important in our own personal realizations in our own lives. In the journey.
One thing that's coming to mind, I feel like, is applying grace when we have that inner narrative that's saying something that can kind of build assumptions. So like, and honoring like your own truth in that moment, and like, what is it that you want? Go for it. And if you need to, let's say, extra communicate to someone while you do that, as a way of, again, like leading with honesty and transparency and clarity, and you're clearing the air, you don't allow things to build up, you don't allow assumptions to build up, it can allow things to go down a fruitful path. Again, even small things. So like even today, I cleaned up some dishes today. I know I wanted the dishes to be clean. I also know that I like to just do that. I like that. There's no animosity against any fact that some of those dishes weren't mine. No animosity whatsoever. If I had a lack of grace in that moment, that could turn into a passive aggressive way. And I don't know. I've been in some houses where like you hear like, as you're cleaning the dishes and maybe you're in your room, you're like, and stuff can build versus the act of, I want to help you out in the way of, it's a couple dishes. It is not a big problem whatsoever.
Right.
You had your family here. We have a lot of different stuff that we're working through right now to just get the house cleaned up and getting prepped for what it is that we're doing. If we collaborate together with that, there's a sense of teamwork with that turns something that could go down the passive aggressive,
dark and sticky road.
yeah, creating separation versus coming together and helping each other out and being able to teamwork with that. Even this podcast together, you and I even talked about like, don't really want to do this, but I mean, probably because we don't want to do it is the reason why we should.
That's right.
And being able to have grace for each other in those inner narrative things, and then whatever needs to be spoken about, let it be spoken. Let it be so. Cuckoo. But tending to those inner narratives and applying grace to yourself or to whoever you're thinking about can provide the fruitful, healthy path forward.
Come on.
And mitigate passive-aggressive behavior, mitigate separation, and create more unity.
Unity is a beautiful thing. I've found that when one is more graceful with oneself, one is more likely to be more graceful with others.
Totally.
And if you're more critical with your own self, you're very likely going to be more critical with other people. Things, it's just the way it is, man. It's just the way that we're wired. The way that we're wired to see things within ourselves and how we regard ourselves.
Right.
About me. And now I'm going to go to the grocery store and this lady took the freaking cart.
Oh, really?
Or get cut off. Or like if you're a little kinder to yourself, okay, we're doing the thing. We're going for it. And then you go to the grocery store, same thing happens. But it doesn't freaking throw you off on your day and you don't come home and like, guess what happened with Linda? And she did that thing again. I don't know. Sorry, Linda. I don't know who you are. Just chose that name.
Linda at the grocery store.
Linda, the grocery monster. Bro, that's the way life goes. And so the fruit of grace with oneself is that you're graceful with other people.
Yeah.
Thank you for washing the dishes.
I got you, bro.
I know it. Thank you,
Yeah.
bro. But yeah, like if we want to, and it's one of those things that is a cycle, a positive loop or a negative loop. What you feed into it will tend to regenerate and create more momentum in that direction versus a negative direction, right? Like if you're graceful and you're graceful with other people, and then you kind of perceive when other people are being graceful to you and graceful to each other, and you're like, this is a really lovely cycle. Let's keep this thing going. Vice versa. The more cynical, more pessimistic, more critical, like the tough way to see and feel life. It just becomes a thicker and heavier, and it can lead to some really tough life moments, broken relationships, self-negation, self-destruction, versus like collaboration and love and contribution and growth and creativity and
Caring. And
so
totally. I feel like there's an element of trust. It's an opportunity to continue building trust with people. Because with that grace is also an element of trust, which is also an element of full acceptance of whoever you're involved with. If it's just you with yourself or the other people that you're involved with in a scenario like that.
yeah.
And when you have that full acceptance, there is no shots being fired. It's actually support, which is something completely different, you know? And again, if, like small stuff like that around the house or bigger things of bigger, huge confrontation things, being able to take, again, as I said earlier, like if there's a breather that needs to be taken, go for it. But just monitor the inner narrative thoughts that are coming to the surface and what picture you're painting, how you're going to approach the conversation. If you approach it with grace, you're going to get so much more, you're going to get to a resolution together so much quicker than if you approach it with, hey, yeah.
And bringing it back to like the grace starts with yourself.
Totally.
Because it's hard to be something that you're not. It's hard to give something you don't have.
Right.
And in those moments where we're regarding ourselves in the mistakes that we've made or the failures that we've accrued in our lives, like if we can apply grace, it opens up a path towards making a decision that we'd rather make or something that we'd be proud of looking back at and being like, yes, I did that. It starts with little bits of momentum and it starts with little acts of grace and forgiveness with oneself.
And I feel like accountability too. So like, again, how you said how like things can accumulate. If through accountability, you don't wait to be honest when someone asks you the question, hey, did you get to? No, I didn't. But accountability, like let's say for me, there was like parts of the mix for Harley's song that I was delayed on. My accountability is to be open and honest about where I'm at now, which might be past a particular deadline. However, with the solution-seeking mindset, this is my new game plan. Rather than just not communicating and hoping things will get figured out at some point.
Well, yeah. And that's the double toll because you're being dishonest with the world, but you know that you're being dishonest with the world. And that's the biggest consequence, I feel.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, it didn't have to be this thing that it became.
Right.
It didn't have to, because like, if you're hiding away from the world, now you've taken a double toll on yourself because you're like, oh man, I know that I'm hiding. I know that I'm not doing this thing that I committed to, or, you know, and that weighs on your own conscience and that weighs on your own perspective of yourself, which is like, what is it? I forget who said it. Norman Vincent Peale, perhaps, that the most important relationship that you have is the one that you have with yourself.
Yeah.
It's important to honor yourself. And that's why it's important to honor yourself.
Definitely.
Because it provides a path towards the things that you most dream of and the things that you most want in your life.
And I feel like it's, again, a nuance to be able to genuinely accept the full and complete human that you are at this particular moment. For me, to accept the mistakes I still make that I know that I'm making, that I know can be improved, but I know I struggle with them. Mm-hmm. Honoring that alone creates an element of freedom to be like, okay, cool. Well, the truth is, this is where I'm at. The truth also is, this is where I want to be at. So what are maybe the steps I can do to get myself there? Step one, acknowledge where I'm at, even if it's at a low point. Financially, if I'm not handling my finances in the way that I want to, instead of getting upset of the fact that I'm not where I want to be, it's like, well, okay, where are you? This is where I'm at. And it's like, all right, that's step one. Step two, where do you want to be? Great. Or however many steps, that's where you want to be. Now, the next step is, with that full accountability, what's the next step that you can make that gets you one step closer to that? Without thinking of the 5,500 steps you need to take to get there, what's step number 1, and then 2, and then 3? And yeah, being accountable, being willing to be the first to say something. Let's say again in like a work environment where everyone agrees, like, yep, sounds good, but you're like, and being willing to say that. There's a lot of amazing, life-changing opportunities that can happen, including inspiring other people by being willing to be the first to say, I disagree. I feel like this could be a potential pivot that we can make. But instead of just shoving that truth down someone's throat, you could say like, hey, I disagree, but maybe we can collaborate to find a different option here. What are your thoughts? And depending on the environment that you're in, hopefully there can be some type of, again, collaboration to find a solution. But yeah, moving through moments of transition.
One last thing,
Yeah.
and we'll close the podcast. It's been an awesome conversation today.
Great.
Actionable grace forgiveness tip. What's your go-to way of giving yourself grace or giving yourself forgiveness or granting yourself permission in the theme of the things that we've been talking today, if any? What do you do when you're doing you?
I guess for me, the biggest element to just start getting back into my core is to tend to the essentials, the things that I know I can miss out on: food, water, sleep. Water as in shower, sweat, cry, whatever it is. Getting to those essentials helps me to get just back to my center. If I'm not nourished, I can't really function. None of us can really function if we're not tending to those types of things. So I know for me, those can go to the wayside when I'm in a little bit more of a distraught mindset. So nourishing myself by tending to those essentials. And also having as many moments of pause that I can allow for myself to have, to be able to tap into God, to tap into life, to tap into myself, to tap into my truth, to tap into my heart, into my gut. And relearning that life is not about perfection. To me, life is about presence. So whatever of these things that I just spoke about that I can do to cultivate presence will serve me in this moment, which will then ultimately serve the other people that I might impact in this moment. If I'm not present and I'm just kind of calculating on where things might be, and I might completely say something that I don't actually intend to say. So as I value the act of moving with integrity and awareness, my first couple steps to be able to get into that integrity and awareness is tending to my essentials. And then having those moments of pause and reflection. And then trusting that I'll make a healthier decision from there. What about for yourself?
For me, I have to deconstruct myself a little bit because sometimes I'll be a little bit disconnected with what is the truth of my life. So I'll be kind of taking this narrative of like a darker side, negative side narrative. And for me, I need to pause and remember what is the truth. And remember that I'm like literally one decision away from having a completely different experience of this day, of this moment, of this conversation, of this project, of my dreams. You know what I mean? Of anything. There's literally, it's like when I look at all the blessings that I have, or if I'm looking at all the things that I'm lacking, there's completely different outcomes. So for me, it's pausing and then recognizing the truth. It's almost like having this fortitude of being like, that's a lie. This is the truth, you know? And in that same lane, it's also like in those moments when I'm being harsh or critical of what I've done or what I didn't do, it's giving myself grace by saying like, man, like if anything I've learned in this life is that nothing is ever wasted and like you are exactly where you need to be. Like that failure or this feeling of like challenge and desolation and like this is serving a purpose. And when I can appreciate where I am and just relax a little bit of that inner critic, inner judgment, self-judgment, that helps me to open up again to like, yes, like this is a blessing. We're doing great. This is a lovely life, a lovely opportunity that I have here. You know, how can I make the best of it? Boom, different outcome. And I've learned another thing that I've learned over the years is like, sometimes it's even it can be as little as like not judging myself moment by moment. Like just letting go of the judgment that I have right now. And then if it comes back again, just letting go of it again. You know, if there's something that's pretty heavy or sticky, a little negative down pressure system, like just stop judging myself. It's a little moment of decision and awareness, bringing it back to neutral land. And if it comes back again, just let it go again. And then just keep, and then focus towards what you do want, what you do prefer. The light, focus towards the thing that is what you want. Yes.
Valuable conversation, bro.
Yes, indeed.
Great to catch up with you now that we're back in town.
We did it. That was awesome. I'm glad we talked about it. And I hope that some of these themes and the things that we spoke about today, we hope that they're educational, that they help and support you in some phase of life that you're in right now. But ultimately, just remember that where you are right now is a beautiful place. Even if it's a little challenging, it'll serve a purpose. Some years down the line, you'll look back at this moment in your life and you'll be like, that's why I was going through that. It prepared me for this next chapter, or it opened the door for me, or it gave me this this drive to learn a new skill set to get me out of where I was. And ultimately, everything is going to be okay. You know, we're lucky and blessed if we have food and a roof over our heads and friends and family. You know, if we have that, we have mostly everything we need, and everything else is a cherry on top. That's what I tell myself. So thank you for watching this episode of the Everflow podcast. If you want to learn more, please visit everflowpodcast.com. And you'll find previous episodes there. You'll find the video versions on YouTube. And if you want to learn more about us, please visit everflowsound.com. We are, once again, best friends, production duo based in LA. And we love to have these kinds of conversations. This is how we live our lives every morning, every afternoon, in the middle of, hey man, what do you think about this? And we're grateful to be able to share it with you guys. So thank you for listening. And we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Peace.